Welcome to Legal 123s with ByrdAdatto. Legal issues simplified through real client stories and real-world experiences. Creating simplicity in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back to the Legal 123s with ByrdAdatto. I'm your host, ByrdAdatto, with my co-host, Michael Byrd.
As business attorneys for healthcare practices, we meet a lot of interesting people and learn their amazing stories. This season's theme is What Now? Each episode will involve a real client story with a high-pressure moment for that practice.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, last season was full of special guests, but the man sitting right here, for those in TV land, right to my left, who is not one of them for some reason, please welcome back, for the first time this season, our partner and series regular, Jay Reyero.
Brad, I thought I was special to you.
Of course you are, Jay. The problem is Michael really doesn't want you to be on the podcast. He's really mean like that. But I fought for you, Jay, and that's why you made it back in.
Jay, just let's ask yourself one question.
Right.
Do you think the person who wants more of him and all the attention was the one fighting for you, or do you think it was the your fellow introvert?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I know the answer to that one.
Well, since it has been a while, what's new in your world since the last time you were here?
Yeah, so you know Olivia, and for the audience out there, she's the oldest of my 3 daughters. She just turned 15 and got her learner's permit, and so not only am I a father and partner CFO here, but I am now officially a driving instructor.
Ooh, well, you're speaking to an expert. I've done it 5 times. Mostly unscathed. I made it through the first 4, and everyone got their licenses, not always on the first try, but everybody got their licenses and has had mostly successful driving careers. My last one did happen to get in a wreck while I was a driving instructor with a permit, and so that was a very interesting experience. Interestingly, Alex did get her driving test passed on the first try.
Nice.
That's nice. I was lucky enough never to be the designated driving instructor. However, any type of highways, parking, or the some bad thing happens where you have to swerve and stuff, I was the person that was assigned to all the rough stuff. So
yeah.
Parallel parking was not anyone else in my family's strong suit. So for some reason, I became mine to teach.
I'm sure that Micah did not want you teaching your kids how to speed at
Right.
like twice the speed limit.
No, gosh, no. That's very bad to speed against that factor.
Yeah, well, funny enough, I'm not too worried about the whole driver instructor part. I mean, I've been the one that's been responsible for teaching all the kids the hard things in life, you know, the potty training, tying a shoe, riding a bike, roller skating. So this part should be pretty easy.
Yeah, sure. Real easy, Jay. No problem. Although everything you did describe so far, pretty large and hard life moments. Hey, asking for a friend, can you teach someone who might be 55 years old how to rollerblade?
What part of any of that said miracle worker? I said driving instructor, not miracle worker. No.
Fair.
But no, what's on my mind now is what kind of car does she get? So I'm curious, what was your first car that you got when you guys were starting out driving?
Well, my first car was no car. My parents wanted to teach me a lesson. So they taught me the lesson that just because you turn 16 does not mean you get a car. So I did learn that lesson and just kind of drove what was available. Eventually, what I consider my first car, my dad gave me his 6-year-old BMW 320. We call it the little black box. and I love that car, and I drove it until it literally didn't run anymore at the end of my college years.
So my first car was not mine either. It was a 15-year-old Oldsmobile station wagon, which I know they don't exist anymore. And it wasn't even mine. It was the car that my older sister and I had to share. And it was such a bad car that 1, it had no radio. 2, it had no heater, which in New Orleans really isn't that bad unless it's the wintertime. And 3, at 55 miles per hour, we called warp speed because the entire car would start shimmering a little bit. So generally speaking, we could only drive it on the street. So that was my first car. And I don't think I really got my own car until college when my dad and I went in. Dad paid for the majority of it, but got a Bronco. But I had to pay for some of that, which is why I actually
OJ
worked at
style.
Summer. Yes. Blue and white Ford Bronco. Freaking awesome.
Nice. Yeah, I'm similar to you, Michael. I got my dad's probably 5-6-year-old. He had a 90s red Infiniti G20, the 4-door sedan. And, man, I drove that thing like I was in Fast and the Furious. It was automatic transmission, and it was a sedan. So it was rather harmless. But, in my mind, I'm sitting there, and I'm covering quarter mile in less than 10 seconds. And yet people are driving next to me going, man, why is that guy wearing racing gloves and sunglasses and going 35 and a 30?
Yeah, kind of like when your kid says, watch this jump on their bicycle.
Yes.
Yes. Well, what's funny now is the perspective, because back then when I was thinking, I want something cool, I want something fun to drive, and I didn't think about safety features. Who cares about airbags, gas mileage? What's that? But now as a parent and the financer of this endeavor, those are the things that I'm thinking about, number one and 1A and 1B.
Yes, totally agree, Jay. I mean, we were doing all this. The first thing we look at is safety, and my wife and I would look at like, oh, how is this car doing wreck, blah blah blah. And we were talking to a friend of ours who happens to be a Captain Tim in the Dallas Fire Department, and we're like, oh, Micah's thinking about getting this car. And he's like, no. She's like, oh, it has a great rating. He goes, I see what those cars look like in a bad accident.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want that car. So since then, every single car we've bought, we've narrowed it down, and we have the Captain Tim test. How does this car really survive in an accident? He's like, good. No. So it's like, that's our test on the safety. So if you need Captain Tim's number, let me know.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, back then I was like, oh, a Hummer, because those were rare back then. I really love a Hummer and can't imagine parking that in Dallas in the compact spaces that only exist. My dream car was a Dodge Viper.
Nice.
And so, 2-seater, low gas mileage. I mean, what's the problem with that?
Yeah. I don't know what has worse gas miles, the Hummer or the Viper.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Well, I have a lot to think about. It's a lot of good tips, a lot of good ideas. Any final advice?
Drink lots of bourbon.
While driving, while she's driving, after she
you might be better off, honestly.
All right, let's get into today's story.
All right. So we'll start today. Let's start by introducing the client for today's story. And this is an aesthetic plastic surgeon here in Texas, and we're going to name him Dr. Toretto.
Ooh. Oh, for audience members who are not playing along, Mr. J just dropped in a Fast and Furious he actually talked about it earlier, but that's a movie reference for Dominic or Dom, who actually was played by Vin Diesel.
Yes.
And there we have it, guys. Right into the movie talk.
It's been a
while.
while.
Took you about 5 minutes.
It's been a while.
Yeah.
Everybody's been clamoring for it.
Yes.
So Dr. Toretto followed a pretty familiar path out there. So following his years in residency, he took part in a prestigious aesthetic fellowship, and then followed by a couple of years of employment, focusing on the training and experience that he needed to gather his cases for his boards.
Gathering cases for boards is a really big part of the early years. It's a pressure point for a young plastic surgeon, particularly one focused on aesthetics, where you may not have the volume needed to get your cases.
Yeah, and for those who are not familiar with it, becoming board certified plastic surgeon, I mean, that's a long haul. You basically have to sit. You do have to sit for 2 really tough exams. There's a written part and there's an oral part, and it's administered by the American Board of Plastic Surgery. And even before the plastic surgeon can sit for this exam, that's a long runway. They may have to work for 1 to 2 years to get enough examples of their cases to submit to the board. So you're talking about they go through medical school, then they go through residency, which is long. Some even go through fellowship. And so then there's years later even to become board certified. So it's a pretty long runway.
Yeah. So Dr. Toretto's, his ultimate vision was always to build his own practice, to start his own practice. And so that's what he ended up doing. For the first year and a half or so, he started putting the pieces together, which was, easy because it was small at first. He envisioned kind of your standard surgical and non-surgical aesthetic practice.
Note to the audience, that's really easy for Jay to say. He's the CFO of our firm. Because even though small truly does make it easy, in context, the experience during this time is a whirlwind. Dr. Toretto would have been having to learn beyond just mastering his craft. He'd have to learn about sales, finance, accounting, marketing, business operations, and all kind of trying to juggle that, wearing those hats at the same time.
Yeah, so true. So many hats that they have to wear, and so while being this one man show in the beginning, when he opened the doors and he was just trying to keep the lights on, kind of after a short while, he started putting some more pieces into place, and he began by hiring that front desk office manager individual who's so critical to practices. But more importantly, he decided to bring on a physician assistant to help out on both the surgical and the non-surgical side because he was just so busy. And so let's call this physician assistant P.A. O'Connor.
All right, Jay. Another great shout out to another character from Fast and Furious. This is a reference to Brian O'Connor, who was actually originally portrayed by the late actor Paul Walker. Rest in peace. But again, second, I mean, it's not unusual for a physician in a small practice to want that physician assistant to come in because you nailed it. They can help both on the surgical and non-surgical part of the practice.
Yeah, and so hiring P.A. O'Connor, helped a little because he was someone that Dr. Toretto had worked with previously, knew clinically, was very sound and very competent. And so there was this trust there, and it allowed P.A. O'Connor to really get going and be productive quickly.
Adding the hat of now being a boss definitely helps if you start with an existing relationship like this. It's not always the case, but yet this is another discipline that he had to add to his arsenal of being a small business owner.
Yeah. And so unfortunately, this ended up being just a short fix because the problem was the practice was just exploding and they were just getting busier and busier. And what Dr. Toretto ended up feeling was that the non-surgical side of the practice just wasn't getting the attention that it deserved or that it needed because the surgery side was in such high demand, but that high demand was also there on the non-surgical side.
Yeah, this sounds like one of those stories about be careful what you wish for at that moment. Everyone startup really wants to get busy first, but sometimes it can be a curse more than a blessing. So what did our doctor do to help solve this problem?
Yeah, so P.A. O'Connor had attended an aesthetic conference, and it was there that he met this aesthetic nurse practitioner. Let's call her N.P. Letty. And N.P. Letty had actually been in the industry for years, was currently working at a plastic surgery aesthetic practice. And fortuitously, she was exploring relocating to Texas. And so P.A. O'Connor introduced the idea to Dr. Toretto that, hey, why don't we hire N.P. Letty to come in and run this non-surgical side of the practice, given her experience?
Well, as the person who has not seen Fast and Furious, is this yet another character?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for answering. Okay. Well, so did he end up, did it work out that way?
Yeah, so he ultimately did, and after a couple of phone calls and a dinner, Dr. Toretto offered to bring in P. Letty on, but as an independent contractor. He could see the growth curve for the practice and was afraid of kind of stopping that momentum, but he just didn't feel like he was ready to bring on another employee. He already had two. Things were moving fast, but he knew and he thought that N.P. Letty could come in and help right away, given her prior experience.
Was he right?
Yeah, absolutely. She came in right away, got to work, and started killing it. She leveraged her prior experience, maybe some paperwork, to begin putting kind of her stamp on the non-surgical side. She saw firsthand how her prior aesthetic practice had operated, and what she saw and felt and experienced was a smooth operation. And so it was easy to kind of start mirroring a lot of those things that she had always known and using a lot of the same ideas.
And Michael, to answer your question earlier, that was Letty Ortiz, who was portrayed by actress Michelle Rodriguez. So yes, another Fast and Furious character. But again, I mean, so far, this is a very common theme that you're describing, that nurse practitioner can come in and kind of take over the med spa / non-invasive services.
Yeah. And so one of the ideas that N.P. Letty brought in was, let's bring in estheticians to handle some of these service lines. She had told Dr. Toretto about how at her prior practice, they were able to create better profit margins, and it sounded like a good plan. And so Dr. Toretto ended up agreeing, but he still just wasn't comfortable committing to that employment relationship. And so they ended up bringing them on as independent contractors as well.
So going back to our Fast and Furious movie, audience members, this is where the movie music starts picking up, the tires start squealing a little bit. So this is a good, but I'm yet to hear where we were involved. So when did that happen?
Yeah, so let's fast forward to about a year and a half later, and you both remember that Texas put forth the bill that would have rocked the aesthetic industry.
Sure did, yes. And Texas, for those that know, did pass a new law. It officially went into effect on September 1st of 2026.
2025.
2025, excuse me. And at the most basic level, the law regulates the elective intravenous or IV therapy services by restricting who can provide these medical services and mandating there's certain prescription and basically good faith exams are being done by doctors, physician assistants, and nurse practitioners.
Brad, that's so accurate and boring because remember when we were in Austin at the plastic surgery meet in March of 2025, and this Jennifer's Law is what it kind of became known as, was first proposed, and it was quite the controversy. It was going to rock the industry. What was really interesting was there was a lot of misinformation.
Oh, yeah.
And so a lot of the plastic surgeons initially were like, hey, that's not going to affect us because we're doctors. And then as we and the others started educating that, no, this bill would completely change the way non-invasive services could be offered and the level of supervision required and the who can do what part of it, it started to become pretty serious, and there was a lot of back and forth in the bill kind of lobby process before the ultimate version that you just described was passed.
Yep.
Yeah, and funny enough, it wasn't even when the bill was proposed and all the conversation started that we got connected with Dr. Toretto. It was actually a couple months after it became in effect and Jennifer's Law was now law, because Dr. Toretto started hearing all sorts of things at every conference he went. NP Letty was talking about it too, and Dr. Toretto finally just realized, like, man, I need to just make sure my practice is buttoned up.
This is a common way young plastic surgeons get motivated to deal with another sometimes overlooked discipline to running a medical practice: compliance. The scary stuff that makes the news can be a trigger for awareness for doctors.
Yeah, and what's interesting is that when we spoke to Dr. Toretto kind of on that initial call, he said, I've been thinking about calling you guys since I started the practice because I heard you guys speak a few years ago. I've just been putting it off.
Yes, very, very common theme on our phone calls. I know I need to do something with my medical practice, and I probably need to get a health care attorney involved. I'll get to it later.
Oh.
Let's not bury the lead here. I don't think it's as much of a surprise, and we can all see that Dr. Toretto has been acting like a pirate.
Yeah, I figured it'd become pretty obvious throughout the story.
Now, audience member, why was he acting like a pirate? Because it's fun to act like a pirate. It's exciting. It's exhilarating. You're going fast. You're breaking things. I think almost all new business owners at some point are acting like pirates in the beginning. They're swept up in all that startup energy, and it's just very singularly focused on one thing: survival.
Yeah, we talked about all the different hats that he's trying to wear and any small practice wears, and there simply is not enough time to give attention to everything. And naturally, the attention gets really focused in on surviving, so getting enough patients to operate on, and so these other things tend to get delayed.
Yeah, and so Dr. Toretto, his goal at this point was just to make sure everything that he had been doing and building and putting together and was done in line with compliance, that he was compliant. He knew there were things that were missing that he had put off, but he also knew that he didn't know if the non-surgical side was compliant because he wasn't running it, and that's what he had left NP Letty to do.
Because why, audience member? Because if it walks like a pirate and it talks like a pirate, or he's a pirate.
And he got to see through the news what potentially it would look like to lose a limb and decided he didn't want that for his practice.
Yep.
Yeah, at the end of the day, Dr. Toretto just wanted peace of mind in how his practice was set up and operating, just to avoid jeopardizing his license.
Well, let's go to break, and on the other side, wrap up talking about how Dr. Toretto can transition from acting like a pirate to hopefully acting like a Navy SEAL.
Many business owners use legal counsel as a last resort rather than as a proactive tool that can further their success. Why? For most, it's the fear of unknown legal costs. ByrdAdatto's Access Plus program makes it possible for you to get the ongoing legal assistance you need for one predictable monthly fee. That gives you unlimited phone and email access to the legal team, so you can receive feedback on legal concerns as they arise. Access Plus, a smarter, simpler way to access legal services. Find out more. Visit ByrdAdatto.com today.
Welcome back to Legal 123s with ByrdAdatto. I'm your host, ByrdAdatto, with my co-host, Michael Byrd, and series regular, Jay Reyero. Now, Michael and Jay, this season, our theme is What Now? And in this show, we're explaining how the movie Fast and the Furious is awesome, or we're explaining when a plastic surgeon is moving fast and furious, it needs to slow down sometimes and really embrace the question that we keep asking, what now?
We've been learning about Dr. Toretto, who's been tapping into his pirate energy as he started his practice. And along the way, while he was still kind of in that pirate mode, he hired a P.A. O'Connor and then eventually even added N.P. Letty. And we were just learning about the pressure points when he finally connected with Jay and was ready to change and to have that peace of mind.
Now, Michael, before Jay gets in the process of really talking about how he guided Dr. Toretto to transition out of being acting like a pirate, remind the audience of the sweet spot we're hoping that every single client starts acting like.
Yeah, we want to act like a Navy SEAL. You get to keep the fun energy, so that's good. We're not trying to take that part away. The Navy SEALs don't act alone. There's a strategic element. They have a team, and so they're maybe slowing things down a little bit, maybe not a little fast and furious. But Brad, what's the expression?
That smooth is smooth, smooth is fast.
There you go. So Jay, what's the first step you took with Dr. Toretto?
Yeah, the first step is let's start with a practice assessment. Let's see what's going on, what's in place. More importantly, we're seeing what's missing. What do we expect to see that we're not seeing? We're trying to figure out what does the world look like that they have built, and then we can go to work in fixing or putting the pieces in place that are missing.
What I love about a practice assessment, it's really like a true serum moment. Like, you can think everything you want about what your practice looks like, but this is the moment of time to really start taking a step back and saying, well, this is what it is. Whether or not you thought it looked like that or not, this is truly how your practice looks. And so it's a great moment in time. And so when you had that chance to do that assessment, tell the audience, what did you find?
Yeah, I mean, from a technical perspective, we found missing several foundational pieces that you want to have as an operating practice to mitigate risk. I think the most obvious was the employment documentation. Even though Dr. Toretto had hired a couple of employees, no employment agreements, no employee handbooks, no type of employment policies whatsoever.
Is this important?
Yeah, it's recommended.
Okay.
Yeah. The moment you hire your first employee, you bring risk to the practice that you have to have addressed.
It can be an eye-opener for practices to learn how that the two most important things to their practice are the two biggest risks to their practice. So your patients and your employees is the source of the lion's share of risk that you carry in your practice.
Which is really frustrating because to be a successful practice, you need to have both patients and employees, which this means you need to start thinking of ways to reduce the risk from these two things you have to have.
Yeah, and on the clinical side, there were no standing operating procedures, no clinical protocols. Most of those patient intake documents and procedure consents were clearly templates that hadn't been really customized at all. And what ultimately happened was that Dr. Toretto just never really examined kind of the clinical process that was going on the non-surgical side, the delegation, supervision rules that were involved that his practice, for the services that his practice was offering, just didn't have a pulse on what was there, what the risk is, where his compliance gaps were. And so it was just kind of a blind spot to him.
If I was sitting here doing the whole like red flag season, this is not the red flag season. All I heard was pirate, check, pirate, check, pirate, check. All right. So we know he was acting like a pirate. Everything that you said so far is pirate, pirate, pirate. So what does this, what can we do to help him to start acting more like a Navy SEAL?
Yeah. So, once technically what we do is we get in, we just start working collaboratively to get all the stuff put into place, the plan of action to get him back to kind of an equilibrium state of compliance. But the biggest piece that was missing, that really what we filled from the moment he brought us on board, was that strategy aspect. There was no strategy in any decisions being made, which is what's missing a lot of times in the pirate mode. And so take, for example, the hiring of estheticians as independent contractors. It was a decision made without any thought with respect to compliance, and what the risk or what the strategy behind that decision was.
And this is so important. There are two potential big landmines when you go that route. So one, with hiring an esthetician, depending on your state, you may run into, and the role that you have for them, you may run into a scope of practice issue. So really thinking about the role when you're wanting to bring an esthetician on and making sure that that there is a strategy there. And then secondly, when you hire as an independent contractor, you introduce risk, because if you label them an independent contractor, but they're misclassified, they really should be treated as an employee. You create state and federal risk on that misclassification claim.
Yeah, and what's important, though, again, going back to acting like a Navy SEAL, is you want to have a team surrounding you. Navy SEALs are about their swim buddies. They are about making sure that they're not by themselves. Now, that doesn't mean that that team has to be the individuals you work with. You could have a team of your financial planner, your CPA, your lawyers, your tax advisor, whoever. That's kind of putting together the right team to help then develop the right strategies, to think through that process, and more importantly, to help you kind of dodge and weave as needed, so you're not just kind of locked up. Because, Michael, what we see happen often with pirates is they're like, so I don't want to lose a limb kind of person, that they shift all the way over to start acting like a cruise director. So let's talk about what happens when they start doing that.
It's kind of the opposite, in the sense that they may hear us speak, and instead of holding their card and saying, we'll call you someday when I get around to it, they may think, okay, well, I need to protect myself. And there's this rigidity without strategy of, I'm going to do all the things that I heard in that speech to make sure that the checklist has been checked on what I need to do from a legal compliance perspective. The most important element to it really is, again, that lack of strategy.
Yeah. And I think AI has created an even more push to go that route, because AI can spit out the checklist of, here are the things that you need, and then they just follow that checklist. But what AI doesn't do is understand what your vision is and your strategy to get there and have that nuanced conversation, which is where we come in.
Yeah, it's a complete trap in both scenarios that you're describing, because in one scenario, they feel this comfort level that they've gone through and mountains of checklists, but truly don't even understand how to implement it on a day-to-day basis. And if it's really helping them, but they have some weird safety that they have it in place, but no one knows how to follow it. No one's using it correctly, but they have the checklist. So that's and because they have that checklist, they can't make any decisions without going through the checklist. All right, Jay, what ended up happening with the practice? What was it called? The Fast and Furious practice? Just out of curiosity, just
rebrand.
Asking for a friend. Did he ever become? Did a good doctor? Dom. I like to call him Dom by his first name.
Dr. Dom.
Dr. Dom. Did he become a Navy SEAL?
Of course he did, Brad. He was working with us. We built a strong foundation, got him to a good place of compliance. More importantly, it gave him peace of mind that he was protected. And then it also gave him the team for the strategic direction on an ongoing basis to keep him from drifting away from compliance. And so every time he confronted a business issue, he had us there to help him decide. So, my final takeaway is Tokyo Drift is an underrated movie in the series.
Another movie drop. Well done. Michael, I think we're almost out of time, so why don't you lead us off with your final thoughts?
Oh, man. Strategy is the key. That makes all the difference. Having a team help you impart their wisdom will save you from getting wisdom the other way, which is by skinning your knee and learning those tough educational lessons.
Well, audience members, unfortunately, that's all the time we have today. And we'll be losing Jay, but don't worry, he'll be back. And next Wednesday, we'll be back where we continue to explore this journey as to I received a patient complaint. What now? Thanks again for joining us today. And remember, if you like this episode, please subscribe
Make sure to give us a 5-star rating and share with your friends.
You can also sign up for the ByrdAdatto newsletter by going to our website at ByrdAdatto.com.
ByrdAdatto is providing this podcast as a public service. This podcast is for educational purposes only. This podcast does not constitute legal advice, nor does it establish an attorney-client relationship. Reference to any specific product or entity does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by ByrdAdatto. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. Please consult with an attorney on your legal issues.